Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So, today I'm going to deliver a lecture on the question of introduction to human rights and media tracking. First of all, I am very glad to participate in the GAIN program. And again, I would like to thank previously Professor Kapo, Dr. Kapo Malakar for inviting me to participate in such an event, which I do believe very preponderant. So the first thing I think that you should know is that who am I? This is maybe the first question that all professors ask, and it's not today. I'm not going to answer it philosophically speaking, but just to give you an idea about my work and my job at Qadi Ayad University. So my name is Hanan El Aisi, and I'm professor of literary and cultural studies. I work in the English department, Faculty of Letters and Humanities, Qadi Ayad University. And of course, I am very specialized in gender studies as I have written many articles indeed and two books. One is in the Arabic language and one is in English. So you can just Google my name and you can have access to all my publications and my work. In fact, what I do exactly is that I read about women or I read women's writings and I study them critically speaking. And I approach them from post-colonial perspectives, from cultural studies perspectives, and I write, of course, articles because my purpose is just to voice women's rights and women's intellectual works, to affirm and confirm that women have a voice, okay, and they can, for example, express themselves in writings. I'm also sometimes I engage in civil activism, and I am a member of the permanent member of a laboratory inside the Faculty of Letters and Humanities at Qadi Ayad University, and I'm also members in some associations and some organizations. And Why? Because I'm very interested in tracking Moroccan, not just Moroccan women, but writings, but even I work on African women's writings. Sometimes even I teach my students Afro-American women's writings. So this is grosso modo so my field of work. Well, so you have also here my email. This is my professional email of UK. So you can, or students who have some questions or some inquiries, so that they can contact me, okay, and I can answer their questions. So you are very welcome. Well, so let's go back to this very important, I do believe, lecture. So the first thing that you should know the lecture objectives. So the first one is to trace the historical background of human rights. So we are going to see that human rights, it's not something recent. They are not that recent, but they are deeply rooted in history. The second objective is to define human rights. What are human rights? What do we mean by human rights? And what are human rights that we all enjoy everywhere? The third objective of this lecture is to highlight human rights and their intersection with media tracking. We do believe that media tracking or the mass media in general, so it's mass media, so it plays a very fundamental role in tracking human rights, either human rights advocacy or human rights violations. But at the same time, we are going to deal with media and development journalism from a critical lens, because we do believe that the media sometimes, of course, it has some bias, some prejudices while tracking human rights, and sometimes it is a sort of raising awareness about the question of human rights. Well, so I think that this figure. It's a very famous figure that all Indian people, of course, know. So it's not just the father of India, but we do believe that he is the father of the whole world. Okay, and of course, Mahatma Gandhi. So talks about also human rights, and he is one of the fundamental milestone personality in the history of human rights. So according to him, the greatness of humanity is not being human, but in being humane. So the greatness of humanity shines through in our endless capacity to create, to connect, and to be creative. So the question of being humane, this is what is of paramount importance, not just to be human beings like any others, no, but to be human is to be endowed with virtue of peace, the virtue of respect, the virtue of dignity, to respect each other and to be tolerant, to accept the other. So this is all these virtues, so we learn them from many personalities and many fundamental figures who have influenced not just the history of human rights, but they have influenced the cultures and the peoples all over the world. So this is something that I have opted for to begin my lecture, because I do believe that we should pay a tribute, okay, to these people, and we should get very inspired by these people, because they did a great job, and we as professors, as students, as participants in this course, so we should feel the responsibility how to implement human rights. Human rights, of course, we have, as we are going to see, there are many declarations, there are many covenants and many treaties or global treaties, but what concerns are not just, it's not just what is on paper, but would like to activate what is on paper and to put it into action. And this is why we are here. We are going to try to just maybe look for solutions and for how we can implement those rights and just elevate them from the papers. Good. Another personality, so, is Nelson Mandela. Also, is, I do believe, is also a very wonderful personality in the world, and we can also get inspired by this personality. So according to him, to deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. So this is the first thing that we should enjoy, is our dignity, is our mutual respect, is our tolerance, okay? Beside the right to life, for example, and beside the right to property and the other rights. So, but this is the most important thing that Nelson Mandela emphasizes in this quotation. And by the way, this quotation is taken from the 1999 speech, okay, of June 26th. So he had spoken about so many issues, and among them, of course, human rights. So what human rights, what's in a name? So what do we mean by human rights? So maybe this is the first question that we might ask. And how can we define human rights? What are human rights? So these are the things that we are going to see. Human rights, as the professor said, okay, recently or beforehand, so they are rights that are inherently basic to everyone, regardless of who you are, wherever you are, however you are, whatever you are. So you should enjoy all your human rights, because you are a human being. So those rights are inherently, and they are guarantees. They are automatically guarantees to everyone, regardless of your race, of your ethnic group, of your gender, of your sex, so of your nationality. So you are acquainted and you are entitled to those basic rights, like the right to life, right to have a very good proper name, right to property, freedom, right to freedom, for example, right to liberty, right to dignity. So all these rights are very basic, and they are for everyone, everywhere. So, of course, as I have said, when we would like to talk about human rights, so I don't want to just limit myself to the United Declaration of Human Rights that we know in 1948, but I do believe that human rights, so they are deeply rooted in history, and that they dated back, okay, into even before history. In 1754 BC, okay, there was the Code of Hammurabi, one of the earliest legal texts promoted justice, protection of the weak, but was limited. Of course, it was limited and in scope, and often unequal. It's not like what we have. It's not like what we have, for example, nowadays in the international in the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, but at least there were some attempts, okay, to establish some human rights at that time. And as I have said, this code took place in 1754 BC. So you see to what extent human rights debate, okay, were very deeply in history. Also, we cannot deal with human rights without mentioning those great Greek philosophers such as Plato, Socrates, Aristotle. So those philosophers, so they had explored ideas of justice, citizenship, and also ethics. And they have, of course, they are very famous for their books, okay, especially idealism, and they were advocating ideal human rights. But of course, all these things, so they were just attempts, and the problem with the Code of Hammurabi, or even, for example, Greek philosophers, and like many other philosophers who have talked and who have questioned this idea of raised women or human beings consciousness about human rights. But their attempt, of course, was a little bit very limited, not legalized, because this is the problem with human rights. They are not legalized. They are not enforced as a law. And even, for example, we're going to see many international treaties. Yes, they are on paper, but how we can enforce them, how we can render them as a law. So that is the question that is raised by many scholars and many militants, of course, all over the world. So it's, of course, as I have said, in addition to philosophers, in addition to the Code of Hammurabi and to many philosophers all over the world who have dealt with this question of human rights, we cannot ignore some religious and traditional beliefs, like, for example, Islam, like Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity. So, of course, human rights, so they are deeply rooted in religious beliefs and traditional beliefs. So Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all emphasize human dignity, equality before God. So the duty to protect the vulnerable, for example, the Quran speaks of justice, fairness. You know that before Islam, so people used to kill their daughters. But after Islam, of course, so this religion, of course, gave the right to life to women, okay, and to girls. So also the Bible, the Torah, okay, highlight the need for compassion, protection of the oppressed. So Eastern traditions, of course, like Buddhism, Hinduism also. So all these traditions, so they have, of course, they have advocated for human rights, especially in relationship with God, and this is something related to divinity. So human rights also, they are deeply rooted in divinity. So they are not just something that is invented by human beings, but even before the declaration or the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. So there were many religions, and there were many traditional beliefs, of course, that questioned and interrogated and raised this question of what are human rights and how can we guarantee people all over the world those rights. So now let's talk about like the 13th century and digging into the history of human rights. So as you see, we cannot deal with human rights without mentioning Magna Carta. So you know that Magna Carta was signed by King John in Great Britain, and Magna Carta was a milestone in the history of human rights. Why? Because it had affected the Declaration of the United States, the Declaration of Independence in the USA. It had affected also, it led to the English Bill of Rights in 1664. So you see the Magna Carta, as we are going. So this is the Magna Carta. It was signed at Runnymede in Great Britain when the feudals, of course, raised a revolution against the dictatorship of King John. So that Magna Carta, of course, it was a milestone that advocated for the feudal liberty, and it had established feudal liberty. And at the same time, it had reduced the dictatorship of King John at that time in 1215. So you see here that again, human rights, how they are deeply rooted in history. Also, we cannot talk about human rights without talking about the English Bill of Rights. Okay, this is at the time of William of Orange in Great Britain, and of course, this is thanks. It was thanks to the launch of Magna Carta, the emergence of Magna Carta. So Magna Carta led to many uprisings and led to many movements concerning human rights. This is also another very important document that, of course, established individual rights, or what the French people called at that time natural rights. Later on, the United Nations, of course, would call those rights human rights. But of course, before, the French people called them natural rights. So this is the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen in France, and it was of course related to the French Revolution that we all know. So this is maybe the fruit, this is the outcome of that revolution. And of course, we can criticize those documents, especially the rights of men and citizen was, of course, criticized and even rejected by French women at that time. We're going to talk about Olympe de Gouges, okay, later on, because she, in opposite to the rights of men and citizen, so she wrote another document, which is the Declaration of the Rights of Women and Citizen, in opposition to this, because according to her and to many women, civilian women at that time, so this bill is, or this document is very limited, and it didn't take into consideration the question of gender, and even it didn't include women's rights. So of course, all of these documents, they are very they are limited, but at the same time, we can say that thanks to these documents, so nowadays we have, of course, generated many documents from these. But this is the development. As we see, human rights, it's like a process. It's a development process. We cannot just come and say, well, so we will be granted this right or that right. No, but it's a process. It's a movement. It's an uprising. It's a revolution. So this is what we should do even nowadays. So if you don't get your rights, so you should take it, and you should strive for it. Good. So in general, so this is grosso modo the historical background of human rights. So I think that we have stopped at many important stages that concerns, of course, or that concern human rights development and human rights historical process. Now we will see the measure. This is the major thing that we are going to tackle. Maybe even we'll see the details later tomorrow. Human rights in the modern era. So this is thanks to it's not thanks, but anyway, it's due to the post-World War era, Second World War era. So because of the atrocities and because of the trauma, because of the Holocaust, so because of all these revolutions that took place in the 1940s due to the Second World War, so this led to an international consensus on the need of a formal human rights framework. And this, of course, culminated in the creation of the United Nations in 1945. Later on, this United Nations, of course, will adopt what we call the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's UDHR. Which of course had been declared on the 10th of December 1948, and each year, of course, the United Nations celebrates this day. So this day is very important, and concerning this declaration, of human rights. So it's very important because it's for the first time. So we have an international, a global document signed by many countries all over the world. For the first time, we have consensus on a document that guarantees every man or every woman's right wherever they are and however they are and whoever they are. So regardless of their sex, regardless of their nationality, regardless of their skin, so they are titled to these rights that are of course established by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So this is a milestone document in the history of human rights, and we do claim that of course this declaration, again, it's not the end of human rights, no, but it was just the beginning of many international treaties, many international covenants, and it was also the beginning of many countries to adopt it, because many countries at that time, so especially the countries that which weren't able to sign, but later on, of course, they get to sign this document. Well, so the most important thing that will be generated from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action, which is a key international human rights instrument adopted by consensus at the World Conference on Human Rights, held in Vienna in June 1993. It reaffirms again the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and marks a significant step in advancing global human rights effort. So as I have said, the Universal Declaration of the United Declaration of Human Rights, so it was just a beginning. Later on, we're going to see that out of that declaration, many covenants, many international treaties so have been generated. Why? Because the problem with the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, it cannot be, as we're going to see in that video, it doesn't have the force of a law. And this is the problem why we cannot implement it. Of course, many countries all over the world have adopted that declaration. But how can we implement it? How can we put all the rights on that paper, on that ink? Okay, how can we implement them? And at the same time, track to what extent they are implemented. So it's not an easy process. Why? Because the declaration, it's just like a forum. Yes, it's very good. It's a global document, okay, that is signed by many countries all over the world. But the problem, this declaration hasn't that force of the law. So it's therefore in the United Nations, so there had been many conferences and many seminars about this question. How can we render this declaration, and how can we endow it with the force of the law? So therefore, the United Nations members so have opted for these documents again, or these treaties, like this program of action, because you see the word action is a key word here. Why? Because they would like to activate the implementation of human rights. They don't want it just to be just ideal, okay, and just theoretically speaking they are there, but practically speaking they are not that visible all over the world. So these are some rights that are mentioned in the declaration. So you have the right to life, liberty, and security, the right to nationality, right to equality, right to freedom, right to freedom from torture, from slavery, from indignity, right to freedom of movement, right to, of course, right to travel, right to freedom of opinion and expression. So among many other rights that we are going to see while examining the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. So as you see here, these are guarantees. These are basic rights that everyone in the whole world, okay, should enjoy without any limitation, without any bias, without any prejudice. But to what extent people in this world, okay, enjoy their rights? So that is the question that we are going to answer. We are going just to attempt to answer, because it's really a very challenging question indeed. Well, as I have said before, so when we talk about human rights, we need another tool beside human rights. We need another mean, for example, to what to celebrate human rights, to defend human rights, to protect human rights, and to track human rights violation all over the world, and to just dissuade to what extent human rights are implemented or not. So we need a tool, and this tool is media. So media and journalism, of course, they play a very pivotal, very preponderant role in tracking, of course, human rights violation, or in celebrating. We're not going to talk negatively all the time, but anyway, this journalism or media, so they play a very important role in tracking human rights violation, yes, but at the same time in sensitizing people about their rights, in raising human beings awareness, because I do believe if you know your rights, so this is the first cure, or this is maybe the half cure. But if you don't know your rights, so this is the problem. And we see that sometimes even in our job areas, in many, for example, faculties, and in many like offices, in many areas all over the world. So sometimes you face people and you ask them, well, so you have this right, but they don't know about it at all. So I do believe that the first cure, okay, to just implement our rights is that we should know our rights in the first instance. Then later on we can, for example, galvanize to just get our right. So here we are going to explore this intersection between human rights and media tracking. Specifically, we'll focus on how the media plays a critical role in defending, promoting, and tracking human rights across the world. We do believe that media serves as a watchdog, sometimes as a source of accountability, sometimes a platform for amplifying voices of the marginalized people like women and children or people with disabilities, and sometimes in general the voices of the oppressed people. So this is the role of media, and this is we are going to see in the other lecture, maybe deeply. We are going to investigate this rule, but what you should know here is that we cannot talk about human rights again without this intersection between human rights and media. So concerning media platforms, so I'm going now just to define to you that what we mean, what do we mean by media? So of course, you know, in this technological digital era, so we have media platforms, so come in various forms, each serving unique purposes in communication and content distribution. Like for example, so you have this like social media nowadays, so like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and many others. We have also like digital media, so all the time people, they are stuck to their mobile phones, so they know the news, they can track even human rights violation themselves. So this is another sort of media, in addition of course to like television and traditional newspapers, magazines providing deep analysis and coverage. We have broadcast media also, such as television and radio, reaches large audiences, like in many, for example, traditional families, they still use television and radio. Instantly, there is also digital media. So you have here also print media, like newspapers and magazines, and also still they play a pivotal role in human rights, okay, reporting and tracking. You see digital media, so this is also, so you have many types on many, of course, platforms that serve or to track human rights, either violation or human rights advocacy, or even to raise awareness and consciousness of people all over the world in order to defend their own rights. Again, so these are several prominent newspapers and magazines, which I do believe they play a crucial role in informing the public about global human rights issues, often referencing reports from organizations like Human Rights Watch, like for example the renowned publications such as the New York Times. You see also the Guardian, Le Monde also provide extensive coverage of international conflict, human rights violation, and in Morocco also. So there is like you see Morocco World News. So this is also an online journal. There is also Express, also in Morocco. This is a sort of tracking also human rights violation or human rights advocacy or the development of human rights. So you see the agencies like, for example, Reuters, Associated Press, serve as a key sources for real-time news, frequently highlighting human rights investigations and reports to inform a global audience. And you see all these, for example, journals and magazines or even associations. So their main role is to track human rights violation or even to talk about human rights and to cover human rights issues all over the world. So these media platforms, so they shape public understanding, they raise awareness of human rights challenges worldwide. Well, so I think that in order to just maybe highlight the issue pertinently, so I will give you like a case study from my country, Morocco, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about Morocco as a case study in order to just illustrate things and to get far away a little bit from theory, because sometimes it has become you just get bored, okay, by theory. So sometimes we need to know about our countries and about our nations, about communities. So Morocco is located in North Africa and known for its rich cultural heritage and diverse history. It has made significant strides in the realm of human rights in recent years. The country, with its deep ties to both the Arab world and Africa, has been working to balance modern governance reforms with traditional values, especially under King Mohammed VI. Morocco has introduced various legal forms aimed at improving human rights, like, for example, especially in areas like gender equality, freedom of expression, and judicial independence. So progress has been made, notably with the adoption of 2011 constitutions, as we are going to see, in areas of freedom, especially the freedom of the press, and also the reform of women's rights, the Mudawana, or the legal reform of 2004. So these were many or very preponderant and seminal texts and reforms that Morocco has undertaken recently. Why? Because Morocco is nowadays is to be seen as a leader in the region, especially in the African region, to advance human rights and democracy. So these are many in Morocco. There are many organizations. So we are not just talking about theory, but there are many organizations which, of course, take care of human rights. So several human rights organizations, press outlets, for example, as we are going to see. So there is this is the National Human Rights Council, which monitors human rights conditions and advises the government, of course, on necessary reforms. There is also the Moroccan Association for Human Rights, which advocates for civil liberties and social justice. The Freedom Now group also focuses on the press freedom, highlighting issues of censorship and the right of journalists. Of course, there are also, so this is the organization, the Democratic Association of Moroccan Women also. So this is for just women. So it advocates for the rights of women. So in fact, there are many associations, okay, that of course together. So these associations, organizations, they contribute to advancing human rights while navigating the complexities of political and social reform in the country. This is concerning, of course, children. So the Moroccan Children Association Trust, so for defending children's rights. So we are going to see this in the lecture of children and human rights and the place of children. Those are considered marginalized people like women, children, and people with disabilities, unfortunately speaking. Well, so as I have said, so in order to be very concrete, so I have talked about the 2011 Constitution of Morocco marked a significant advancement in the recognition of protection of human rights, reflecting, of course, response to the demands of the 20th February movement. As you know, it was related to the Arab Spring, and this constitution enshrines a range of civil, political rights, including freedom of expression, freedom of journalism, freedom of assembly, of making assemblies, freedom of organizing and establishing associations, as well as the rights of women, children, and people with disabilities. So these are all these things, they are established in our constitution. So affirming Morocco's commitment to international human rights, so standards, because Morocco, of course, has already signed the United Nations Declaration, of course, all the members of these organizations, though they have agreed upon that declaration, and now all the organizations that we have seen, so they are a part of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights agenda. There is also another very important thing, and it was a milestone in the history of the development of women's rights in Morocco, is the 2004, of course, Mudawwana. So this Mudawwana, so this is the constitution. This is the constitution, and this is the Mudawwana. This is the legal reform. Just to know. So this is the Mudawwana. It means the family. The family code was a landmark reform in personal status law, significantly improving women's rights and family matters such as marriage, divorce, child custody. So the Mudawwana really enhanced gender equality and women's empowerment within the family. Still, of course, we cannot ignore that there are many other challenges that Morocco is facing nowadays, and the women's organizations, of course, are facing. But anyway, so there recently, of course, with the ascendancy of Mohammed VI to the throne, so there has been really a tremendous effort to establish human rights in general, not just women, okay, the family rights in general, that cover women's rights, children's rights, and also people with disabilities. So as I have said, so these organizations, these constitutional organizations, so they have enhanced human rights, and they are considered as legal frameworks which demonstrate Morocco's ongoing efforts, of course, to advance human rights, albeit with varying degrees of effectiveness and social acceptance. But anyway, so we can talk about that. We can say that there is a progress in comparison with of course, with the 1990s, for example, or the 1980s Morocco. And in order to prove this democratic vision of Morocco, in order to talk about how our, for example, leaders in Morocco, they are very concerned about this question of human rights. So we are going to just see some excerpts from our Majesty, okay, King Mohammed VI, may the Almighty bless him. So in many of his speeches, so he claims, and this is a speech in 2011. So he claims that Morocco has committed itself to a comprehensive and balanced approach to human rights, which includes civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights. So you see in many occasions, in diverse contexts, so our leader is all the time pushing people to advance human rights, pushing people to defend human rights, to protect human rights. Why? Because we do believe that we cannot reach civilization, we cannot reach development, either economic development, political development, cultural development, educational development, without establishing human rights first. So this is a priority. This is the first thing that all countries, for example, should work on and should advance. So another speech. It's in 2011 all the time. So our leader claims that Morocco has opted to build a democratic state based on the rule of law, the preservation of human dignity, the respect of freedoms, and the protection of human rights in their universality and indivisibility. The indivisibility, this is one of the major human rights principles, and we are going to see human rights principles later on. Human rights, they are inalienable, as our leader claims, and at the same time they are indivisible. So they are for everyone, and they are for human beings, and you cannot remove those, you cannot live without them. So as you see here, our king, his majesty, so he has established in many occasions, in many speeches, so he has pushed people to just defend human rights, but not just in Morocco, but in the whole continent of Africa. So this is our strategy. We are not enclosed, but we are open to many countries. We are open to Europe. We are open to our brothers and sisters all over the world. And we have many good relationships with many countries all over the world. And another proof that human rights have been developed in Morocco is that even in the United Nations Council. So the president of the United Nations Council is a Moroccan, and Morocco this year in 2020 in 2024 presides over the United Nations Human Rights Council for this year, and the president is Omar Zneber. So he is the president for this year, for 2024 United Nations Human Rights Council. And if we can, for example, just listen to an excerpt from his speech in order to be acquainted with, of course, he is speaking about a global strategy, not just Moroccan strategy, because he is representing the whole world in the United Nations, not just Morocco. So if you allow me, so I will just, I don't know if we can have access to this video.
Thank you very much, dear Mr. Pascal, for you and for all your team having prepared this important gathering with the representative of the press here in Geneva. I'm so happy to be with you this afternoon again, as said by Mr. Pascal, to present to you an overview about the next session of the Council, also some elements about the activities of the presidency, and of course also to answer your own question on any matter you would like to raise this afternoon. As far as the next session is concerned, it will be, as said, an intensive one for 5 weeks. It will be, illustrated by some high-level panels, which is according to the mandatory decisions taken by the Council on the question, particularly on strengthening the integration of gender parity, gender approach in the work of the Council. The question related also to the right of indigenous people. Other issues also like education, child, will be discussed in some of these high-level panels. And also a panel, I would like to stress that, on the right of development. You know that, it is an important issue discussed within the Council, and we do hope that this panel could help the membership to advance in such an important issue. While it is also discussed thoroughly in New York in preparing the Summit of the Future and the outcome of this summit, the Pact of the Future. We will have, as usual, also interactive dialogues with mandate holders, working groups, with the High Commissioner himself. And by the way, the Council, of course, will hear from next Monday, the general report of the High Commissioner. I'm pretty sure he will give, a panorama about the situation of human rights worldwide. We will have also to deal, as usual, with the decisions, the resolutions, which have already been presented in their titles, at least during the organizational meeting, which took place on the 26th of August. And during this organizational meeting, it was clear, that many initiatives, even some new initiatives, have been presented, and that we will have important issue on country situations, on thematic situations to discuss again during this session. We will have also the responsibility to nominate some new mandate holders. I have already made my proposals to the membership concerning 2 of them, waiting that the process concerning 2 others be accomplished before precising my own choices to the Council, which then will have to decide on that. As far as the activities of the presidency, I am also very happy to share with you some of the highlights, where, as you may know, as I precise it during the past session, I met with you. Since the beginning, I have nominated 17 co-facilitators working on various tracks. The question of the review of the mandate of the Council is discussed. We know that it is upon the General Assembly to take a decision according to the resolutions, to the resolution adopted on this issue before 2026. But it seems to me, as President of the Council, and I am joined by numerous members of the Council, that Geneva has to discuss, because it is the workplace for human rights for United Nations, and it has, and particularly concerning the future of the Council itself, the membership here with all other stakeholders, civil society observers, are, in my view, completely competent to discuss this issue. The question of rationalization and efficiency of the Council, you know that we are confronting these past months and since a while huge difficulties, financial difficulties, the United Nations crossing a severe liquidity crisis. So it is a new argument for us to progress in our discussions in rationalization and efficiency of the Council. Other tracks are of utmost importance, the one of gender parity, gender equity. We will announce during this session the establishment of an advisory board on gender approach for the first time, with a very significant composition of leaders of international organizations, ambassadors, representatives of civil society, of course in partnership with the focal point dealing with this issue and UN Women. And we are in touch with the headquarters of UN Women on New York and also their office here in Geneva. And we will make this announcement hopefully before the end of this month. The question of accessibility, disabilities, also I hope that we will gesture it more better, in any way relatively better, by creating a platform and creating some progressing in norms, facilitating the accessibility in the work of the Council for persons with disabilities, and more widely taking care about this issue, which is of at the heart of human rights enjoyment. Likewise, the other tracks, just to nominate them, the question of in strengthening the UPR processes. You know that UPR is an exercise which is widely accepted and positively assessed, but we still have to do more. To make the Council again more credible in its work, and the countries, members of the Council, and all the international committee satisfied with such exercise, this peer review exercise. the issues of and giving more possibilities and more inclusivity for countries, less developed countries, small island countries also. These are all issues of utmost importance for all of us, and we are, of course, trying to advance at the best. New technologies, as said by Mr. Pascal, question of artificial intelligence. You may have heard about this really, I would say without hesitating, unprecedented session we had yesterday as a presidential consultations and formal one, but a very significant gathering. I invited the leadership of the main international organizations involved in the governance of artificial intelligence worldwide. So we had the leaders of WIPO, of ITU, of UNESCO, also some leaders from the private sector, the vice president of Amazon, many academicians, but particularly what is also to underline is the intensive participation of the membership in such a dialogue, with the aim, to have the balanced approach on opportunities offered by these technologies, but also to face challenges. I won't enter into detail. I am here, of course, to answer your questions, if any, on this matter. But what is, for me, in my current responsibilities, is essential, is that the Human Rights Council be at the heart of this governance, the global governance of artificial intelligence worldwide, because it is completely linked with the enjoyment of human rights. We did the same, you may remember, last June on the question of the impact of climate change on food security and health security. So the presidency has presented these main thematics as major one and priorities for itself. And what I am very satisfied to tell you this afternoon, humbly and modestly, that we are advancing in such. It's not easy. It always, of course, the purpose of a lot of discussions, but the presidency have been met with, enthusiastic participation by the membership and by other stakeholders whom I invited to join us in this exercise. These were the main elements, Mr. Pascal, dear attendants, I wanted to share with you as an introduction for our dialogue this afternoon, and then I give you back the floor, Mr. Pascal.
Thank you.
I'm very glad to be able to take part in this celebration in St. Louis on Human Rights Day. Ever since the Declaration of Human Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, was passed in Paris in 1948 on December the 10th, we have fostered the observance of this day not only in the United States, but throughout the world. The object is to make people everywhere conscious of the importance of human rights and freedoms. The reason for that is that these are spoken of and emphasized in the Charter of the United Nations, and the Declaration was written to elaborate the rights already mentioned in the Charter, and to emphasize also for all of us the fact that the building of human rights would be one of the foundation stones on which we would build in the world an atmosphere in which peace could grow. For that reason, all over the world, we've encouraged the associations for the United Nations to observe a whole week before United Nations Day comes around to explain United Nations and what goes on in that organization. And when we come to the celebration for human rights, we try to particularly have people study the Declaration so that they will really understand what were considered to be the most essential rights for all people to have throughout the world. They fall into different groups, and one reason that we are now considering the writing of a covenant or covenants is because we feel that these rights should sometime be actually written into the laws of countries throughout the world. And that can be done by the adoption of covenants and the changing of laws to meet whatever a country has accepted in a covenant which will be written in treaty form. These things must be well understood, because even though you accept treaties and countries ratify those treaties, the real change which must give to people throughout the world their human rights must come about in the hearts of people. We must want our fellow human beings to have rights and freedoms which give them dignity and which will give them a sense that they are human beings that can walk the earth with their heads high and look all men in the face. If we observe these rights for ourselves and for others, I think we will find that it is easier in the world to build peace, because war destroys all human rights and freedoms. So in fighting for those, we fight for peace.
Yes, so I think that the video is very clear and the message of Eleanor Roosevelt here is clear too. I will give you some time just to maybe write some notes in order to discuss them.